Hey, I'm Friendly Baron and welcome to my time machine. In this video I want to take a look at the world record speedrun of GTA 5 from 5 years ago and compare to the current speedrun strategies we do. In the first mission, Prologue, the shootout leaving the bank demonstrates some early changes. The 2014 run is pretty still and fires off shots to clear out the cars barely moving the reticle. The old run is being done on Xbox 360, as the Xbox One, PS4, and PC versions were not yet released, so they have to take it a bit slower when aiming manually, or often use the auto-aim. Many people who commented on my world record video last month claimed I was using auto-aim, which is flattering really. However, auto-aim in GTA 5 goes for the torso, not the head, which ends up being much slower even if it is automatic. Along with the better shooting, the current speedrun also skipped taking out 2 cars on the way down, as it's been found they just despawn once you pass them. In this short shootout, the newer speedruns save 10 seconds, which may not seem like much, but 10 seconds of shootout over the course of the run's nearly 20 shootouts would gain them 3 minutes alone, and most fights are much longer than this one. Moving on to Franklin and Lamar, the same route we use today was found all the way back in 2014, going around the corner early, getting pushed by Lamar up the hill, and taking shortcuts through the city to make the drive shorter. What's changed though is the discovery of how strong brake boosting is, where we hit the brakes to trick the car into giving us a launch boost. The speedrunners were unaware that this existed back then. Also noticed in this mission, the newer speedrun has way fewer props around the map and on the sidewalk. The graphics settings on console are locked, but now that we speedrun on PC, we can edit the settings to have less clutter spawned in around the map, as well as lower traffic density, but we turn up traffic variety to give us a better chance of getting a good car later in the run. Beginning pulling favors, the usage of Franklin's power for turning is more often used these days as we come to learn how powerful it is once mastered, instead of just being a lame gimmick. The power is also used to skip Tonya's voice lines here. I'm not going to go over every little single strat difference. Most changes are just new discoveries, and I've covered those in my Casual vs Speedrun series or the update videos. The goal of this video is to look at the overall playstyle differences, or the strats that used to exist on older runs either due to console limitations or because the runners thought it was faster. For example of that, on console they used to begin the chop mission by driving straight into the fence, which would clip the car into the start trigger, and in this hilarious instance, cause the car to go flying up into the air. However, if you try this on PC in current day, it will just kill you, either due to the higher frame rate or other changes in the game. So we start the mission now by driving into the side of the fence. It's technically a few milliseconds slower than driving right up, but much safer to pull off every time. Another slightly safer change to look at, later in Chop when chasing down D to kidnap him, the new speedruns go on the right here to avoid the train. There's no time difference overall, but it's just a bit safer to not worry about the slow-moving train running Franklin over. When you end Chop and begin complications, the player's in the van. The 2014 speedrun heads back to Franklin's house to grab the bullet we drove in the previous 2 missions one more time, while the 2019 speedrunner just heads straight to Simeon's, and once there, we'll take one of the vehicles conveniently located in the parking lot. A common practice back in 2014 was to often change to the fastest car possible. However, even in this instance with the Bullet supercar, the time it takes to change cars is not worth the time spent not moving. When the 2014 run gets going from Simeon's, the 2019 speedrun is already way ahead. Just keeping your current vehicle is faster in most cases, as the drives in this game tend to just be lots of short dashes, not long back and forths. It's hard to get an exact value because of brake boosting in the new run, but the 2014 run probably lost 10 seconds changing to the technically faster car instead of just going in the van at first. Looking at the license plate like the 2014 runner is doing now also has no real purpose. The runner Decap told me he tried doing it to see if it would help him go faster, either by raising FPS or despawning vehicles, but it did nothing. However, he seemed to keep doing it because why not? In marriage counseling, the 2014 run was able to avoid the 2 cars of enemies spawning by just driving right across this crosswalk. When the speedrun community moved to PC, the strat did not work, and we get detected on the roads, causing enemies to spawn. A backup strategy where we went perpendicular across the road was created, which did lose about 8 seconds compared to the old gen runs, but at least had the same effect. Only about 2 months ago was a strat similar to the original one created, where by using the look back button, then manually turning the camera forward again while holding look back, you can drive down the road without Martin Madrazo's men spawning. You may have seen this already in my recent strat update video, but if not, I have a link to that in the description along with a guide explaining brake boosting if that is new to you or you'd like to learn. If you are familiar with SummoningSalt's world record progression videos, you may be wondering why I did not make that style, where the video goes over each improvement of the world record. The simple answer is GTA 5 speedrun is over 6 hours long, while the game's SummoningSalt covers are usually 5 to 60 minutes long. Picking out the improvements of each run would be a nearly impossible task, not only because of the length, but also each world record generally comes with fewer mistakes, unlike the one DCAP makes now. This 2014 run was world record at the time with a time of 7 hours and 29 minutes. My run that was world record up until 3 days ago was 6 hours and 13 minutes, yet also had plenty of mistakes, like a motorcycle crash in the same mission as the 2014 run. However, I only made 4 of the 5 major mistakes in my run, while the 2014 run had well over 20. Lots of the time save comes from a lack of mistakes, which is hard to quantify, and it would feel mean if I went through each of the past 5 years of runs and showed all the mistakes. Instead, I prefer to do videos such as this one that mostly cover the strats themselves and the successes, rather than a full progression video. On Daddy's Little Girl, the current strat is to just shoot the 2 guys on the jet ski right away, then drive over to where Jimmy is waiting for Michael and Amanda. These shots are easier to hit as we play on a version of the game from 2015, where among other things, the waves in the ocean disappear during missions. In 2014, that bug wasn't there, and shooting from an Xbox controller is a bit tougher, so the speedrun would drive up to land without getting too far from the jet ski and pop the 2 enemies before continuing. They couldn't drive all the way to where Jimmy is waiting right away, as getting too close early fails the mission. The next strategy in both runs is done by some setup previously, which is interestingly different in each run. In 2014, the speedrun would stop at ammunition and buy a grenade along with armor for safety for a few missions before continuing on to the father-son mission. Then later, they use that grenade to now blow themselves up and death warp to the hospital in the middle of the city. The current speedrun in 2019 has eliminated the stop at ammunition but still achieves the same effect. First, they drown themselves to low health while swimming to the boat to do that jet ski shootout. Then after the shootout, the 2019 run runs up the stairs and blows up this propane tank. However, this tank only does half your health and damage, which makes drowning yourself to low health important. Otherwise you would not die from the explosion. You would have to stand in the fire it creates for a while to fully die. After Nervous Ron and beginning Crystal Maze, the 2014 run is getting into the plane we had flown during the last mission. I mentioned that it was slower during Casual vs Speedrun in GTA 5, and that remains true here, as the 2019 speedrun takes a doom buggy that consistently spawns next to the hangar and drives that to the next few missions. The plane was faster back then, as they didn't have the doom buggy's off-road routes as precise as they are today. Comparing now, the plane is much slower, as they continually have to land it, run to the mission, run back to the plane, and get it back up to speed again. If these drives were longer, the plane would be worth it, but the stopping and starting makes the plane's top speed and ability to go directly to the next mission objective not actually worth it. The plane also cannot land directly next to most missions or it will despawn, lengthening the run. The buggy arrives to this mission about 10 seconds quicker, and that's about the same for every other mission done with the plane. At the end of this series of Trevor missions, we end up back in Los Santos, and the 2014 run does pull off a cool landing right into the garage, which always broke part of the plane off. The runner toggles Trevor's power in order to ensure they don't die in case the plane explodes from that while running inside. After the mission, also notice how the 2014 run's objective screen stays open, and they have to wait before switching. On the newer versions of the game, it was made optional to open, and the 2019 run was able to switch to Michael right away. This alone affects at least a third of the missions from what I saw, probably accounting for over a minute of time in the comparison between these two runs. Back at Crystal Maze, the old speedrun still poured the gas trail and blew it up, while nowadays we run up the stairs and throw a grenade. Even if the 2014 run knew about that strat, it wouldn't be great for them, as in 2014 first person didn't exist until late November on consoles, so any strat where we use first person, notably to run faster outside or run upstairs quickly, did not work back then. In Dead Man Walking, while the 2019 run is doing the now famous blimp strat, the 2014 run was buying armor and ammunition again. The shootout in this mission is treacherous with how quickly you can die when skipping enemies, so the old speedrun used to grab armor for safety. However, even back then, the runner said here that he probably didn't need to buy the armor anymore as we aren't taking as much damage, which shows how even 5 years ago they were slowly gravitating toward the riskier strats. The 2019 run is actually a little bit slower than the shootout, as they do take out a lot of guys on the ground floor, as we're usually at low health due to the blimp strat, but it's worth it for the time that saves and the skipping ammunition saves. In Three's company, the 2019 run navigates between the buildings, which confuses the attackers and causes their helicopters to crash into the buildings behind us. You can see the explosion shake and disappearing dots from the minimap. The 2014 run wasn't aware of the thread the needle strat, so they would go nearly to the end of the mission and take out the two choppers themselves, similar to pulling onto land with the jet ski back on Daddy's Little Girl to take out enemies right at the end of the mission area. The push strat I've shown in previous videos during scouting the port worked natively on consoles, and it's all they did, where for PC users, this strat is pretty sketchy and doesn't work as well, along with requiring third-party software to get the lower frames needed to accomplish the pushing. Normally we just pick up the crates in 2019 right now. Starting by the book, the 2019 run turns around into the river, while the 2014 run would go straight and left and sneak past the train that is scripted to spawn, then also jump into the river. It's kind of the only strat I saw watching this 2014 run that made me actually surprised. Apparently they did this for like 2 to 3 years longer too, always going straight instead of just turning around right away. Kind of a silly habit someone started and took a long time to finally improve on. At the end of Minisub, you need to steal a vehicle as Trevor, and Decap in his 2014 run messed up grabbing the road vehicles, and was unlucky to not get any spawns in the parking spots after. These days, we have cars spawned in every time anyways, but also would have made the heads up play to call a taxi if there were no cars. While in this main speedrun category we ban using taxis for fast travel as they aren't as fun and reduce the skill of the game, you can still call one and steal it, and they only take exactly 10 seconds to arrive, and are commonly used in other categories like 100% or stunt jumps. In Caida Libre, it was once common practice to blow up the van as soon as you were away from the observatory, then steal a car off the road to drive to the cement plant. However, this required yet again a slow change of vehicles, and you often got a slow vehicle such as the Prius. It's been found now that with improvements to this route, it's just as fast, even compared to the best sports cars in the area, to just drive the black van all the way to the ending of the mission, and blow it up once there with a well-placed grenade along the wall, often saving 5 or more seconds, which makes this the second mission where we stay in a technically slower car to go faster overall. I want to show one example of the type of strat I'm not fully covering as they have been covered in my other videos. The 2014 run here is basically the same as casual gameplay, just perfected, by going across the river and shooting the enemy. Meanwhile, the new speedrun goes the opposite way up the hill and snipes the enemy from farther away. This kind of mission is just really good casual for speedrun, and sometimes even in the 2019 run, all we are doing is playing a perfect casual, and that's okay, just not the scope of this video. In military hardware, both runs use the helicopter to fly over to the caravan and steal the truck. In 2014, they would drive cross-country straight back to Trevor's meth lab for delivery. The truck is so slow off-road, and this terrain's so bumpy that going the long way around the highway ends up being faster, and that's what we do in the run these days. The original speedruns would try to jump onto the back of the train and Derailed here, the same spot the casual meets it, or just take the first jump on the side if missed. We now jump onto the train much later near the end of the section, so the 2019 run spends more time at max motorcycle speed instead of max train speed, as you can travel much faster on the bike, and there's no penalty for getting on the train late, as long as you don't mess up, and as long as it's done before the rail bridge over the highway. Another example of the long mission pass screen occurs at the end of Monkey Business. In 2019 we just blow ourselves up right away before the mission pass screen even appears. In 2014, they had a fun time with this where you could reach the mountain and jump off right as the screen went away, killing themselves with a fall to warp to the hospital in the city as well. This is hilarious to me. In surveying the score, I am always driving forward and then turning around in order to despawn traffic in front of me to help the janitor's car we are traveling move along. Back when Decap was doing runs, they didn't do any car despawning, so he just drove backwards because the mission is that boring and that simple. Swag strats like that are the best. In the wrap-up, we parachute down from the plane we borrowed and arrive at the marker for the mission. The older speedrun would take a ton of time to get a car here and then use it to drive to the mission, start it, drive around the back of the museum, then still go up a bunch of steps to where Davy is waiting. We've realized since then it's not worth doing all that. You can just run in the front door and go through the courtyard instead. It saves a fair bit of time. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, you are legally obligated to subscribe, otherwise I will kidnap your family. Thanks so much to the decap for letting me use his footage. I feel bad for that guy. He had to play with that terrible Xbox FPS and quality for so long. You only had to watch it for 15 or so minutes. Before you ask, there will be an episode 2 of this series, yes, in another 5 years. Look for it then.